The following 4 trades may have flown under your radar, but over the course of time have proven to be some of the worst swaps in recent baseball history. But with the pressure of the deadline clock ticking down, sometimes GMs make some poor judgment decisions. Here are some of the worst. The 2020 MLB season was peculiar for an assortment of reasons, but one which isn't discussed as much is the oddity of that year's trade deadline. It took place a full month after the typical date and was still technically about halfway through the season. It's just that the halfway mark was only about 35 games. Most MLB teams had no idea what their identity was that year. They were just trying to coast through 60 games and hopefully stumble into one of the hundreds of playoff spots available at season's end. One team that pretty much knew that they were out of it though was the Arizona Diamondbacks, 14-21 on the day of the deadline, nearly a dozen games back of the eventual World Series champion Dodgers in the division. With their offense being led by Cole Calhoun, of all people, and everyone outside of Zach Gallen underperforming in the starting rotation, the team was trending nowhere. Their team ERA of 5.17 to that point ranked 26th in MLB, second to last in the National League. They stripped down that pitching staff, sending away relievers Andrew Chafin and Archie Bradley, and much more notably, starting pitcher Robbie Ray to the Toronto Blue Jays. Or as some baseball detectives have decreed him, the long-lost identical brother of Seth Smith. This is way too niche of a baseball joke, even for me. In return, the Diamondbacks acquired left-hander Travis Bergen, who was formerly swiped in the Rule 5 draft by the Giants a year prior. He was eventually returned and traded here, and he made just 6 appearances for Arizona before the Blue Jays purchased him back in the offseason. This is like if you borrowed a bag of chips from your friend, ate 3 of them, and then just gave them back. The acquisition of Ray helped provide innings and not much else in 2020, ending the season with more walks than any other pitcher in baseball. But the thing is, the lefty formed a special bond with pitching coach Pete Walker. Though the results were not there, Ray was throwing more strikes and issuing fewer walks in Toronto. Per The Athletic, his experience in those 5 weeks with the Blue Jays was enriching enough that it convinced him to sign back with the team for the 2021 season. Now, this is a bit of a loophole, but I don't think it's outlandish to say that without the initial deadline deal from 2020, Robbie Ray wouldn't have signed with the Blue Jays the following year. With effective changes made to his arsenal and approach, Ray finally reached his potential in an electric 2021 campaign. He led the American League in earned run average, whip, strikeouts, innings pitched, and games started, helping him capture a near unanimous Cy Young victory in the American League. In the 2020s, he's one of only 3 pitchers with a sub-3 ERA and over 240 strikeouts in a single season. His 248 punchouts ranks 3rd all-time in single-season records for Toronto pitchers, and only Roger Clemens had more double-digit strikeout games in a full season as a Blue Jay. His 6.62 ERA in 2020 is the highest ever by a pitcher in a season prior to winning the Cy Young Award, showcasing just how much a change in environment benefited the Southpaw. A big reason for the drop was lowering his walk rate. After averaging nearly 8 walks per 9 innings in 2020, Ray walked just 2.4 batters per 9 in 2021. No pitcher since 1900 has ever improved their walk per 9 rate that much from one season to the next. Ray parlayed this terrific year into a 5-year contract worth $115 million with the Mariners, and there's no way Jerry Dipoto traded him already, right? You can safely argue that there's a chance none of this happens without that initial lopsided deadline deal between Arizona and Toronto, where the Blue Jays came out 7 wins above replacement richer and even got back the guy they'd sent away in the first place to put salt in the wound. Let's turn the clock back a decade and then some for our next entry. Before he was securing the final out in the 2013 World Series, Koji Uehara was one of the few bright spots in an otherwise underwhelming Orioles pitching staff in the early 2010s. After initially signing a 2-year deal worth $10 million, Uehara transitioned from a starter to reliever role in his sophomore season and emerged as one of the best arms in the American League. He was pitching his best season in 2011 with his 1.72 ERA at the end of July, ranking in the top 10 of all pitchers in baseball. His strikeout per 9 rate near 12 to that point was even more impressive, ranking 4th in MLB just behind Jonathan Papelbon, Craig Kimbrell, and David Robertson. This made him one of the most coveted pieces at that year's trade deadline, with the Orioles 20 games under 500, firmly in last place in their division. The Texas Rangers acquired the reliever to aid them in their push for another AL West title and World Series appearance. Uehara came back down to earth in his new uniform, however, pitching to an ERA of 4 in the final 2 months of the season and allowing 5 runs in just an inning and 2/3 of work in their ensuing run to the World Series. This contrasts greatly from his run for Boston 2 years later, where he tossed 13 2/3 innings with just 1 run allowed, securing 7 playoff saves and ALCS MVP honors for his efforts. That is his second greatest legacy in Boston, though. His greatest legacy is accidentally slapping Shane Victorino in this absolute frenzy of high fives. Still, his career in the end was very impressive, as Uehara owns the lowest whip of all qualified pitchers in MLB history. That's no joke. What makes the trade sting more beyond his postseason performance was what the Rangers gave up to get him in the first place. Texas decided to part ways with first baseman Chris Davis, a former 5th-round pick who once ranked as the number 65 prospect in all of baseball. Davis always slugged with good efficiency, but he played poor defense at first base and couldn't get his strikeouts under control. His 31.5 strikeout percentage from 2008 to 2011 was 3rd highest in MLB for hitters with at least 1,000 plate appearances. But with the pressure of producing in a contending lineup off of his shoulders, Davis began to make steady progress as a big league hitter in 2012. He crushed 33 home runs with a 121 OPS plus in a breakout season, helping Baltimore reach the playoffs for the first time in 15 years. It was his season that came after that proved to be most memorable, though. Davis clubbed 53 home runs and collected 138 RBIs, which both led all of MLB, helping him finish 3rd in MVP voting. It's one of just 6 50-plus home run seasons in baseball since 2013, a dozen-year span, and it's the most in a single season by an Orioles hitter ever.
Chris Davis, 2011?
Is he even on the O's?
So he did make it to the O's in 2011. He got traded there and collected 13 RBIs.
What was 2013?
2013 was 138, which would have been the second best first baseman season.
Now, we all remember that terrible contract, which the Orioles will be paying for throughout the 2020s as well. In fairness, with my other entry of Robbie Ray and his post-contract value, I'll include all of Davis's time in Baltimore, even when he was the worst player in baseball. This makes this acquisition worth about a dozen wins above replacement overall, compared to just 1.6 BWAR for Koji Uehara. The thing is, to add a twist to the knife, you can also lump in Tommy Hunter, who was also included in this deal. Hunter pitched to a 2.88 ERA from 2013 to 2014 in over 140 innings, which was a top 10 mark in the American League in this window. Hunter adds 3 more wins above replacement to the Orioles' value in the trade, making this deadline swap all the more lopsided. The next trade goes back 1 year from our previous entry, as we'll focus on the Washington Nationals before their glory in the 2010s. Before Steven Strasburg, Bryce Harper, and others came through the system to bring the rebranded franchise into relevance, the Nationals were in the midst of a 5-year streak of losing seasons with no end in sight. Their pitching staff was routinely amongst the worst in the league.
He could have gone to New York.
Pitching 200 innings last year.
He could have gone to Philly.
He's an all-star after all.
Jason Marquis.
That's gonna get him. Could have gone anywhere.
Colorado.
New York.
Philly.
For what? A cheesesteak?
And guess what, Nats fans?
We got him. He's ours.
In 2010, however, Washington showcased a sneakily good bullpen. The likes of Tyler Clippard, Drew Storen, and Sean Burnett emerged as a trio of formidable arms at the back end, but ahead of them on the depth chart was closer Matt Capps. Capps had signed a 1-year deal in the prior offseason worth just $3.5 million, and in turn, he made his first All-Star team, pitched 46 innings with a 2.74 ERA, and established himself as the closer of the team. His 26 saves at the time of the deadline ranked 6th in MLB, making him one of the more reliable high-leverage pitchers available to trade for. The Minnesota Twins, who already held the second best bullpen ERA in all of baseball at the time, looked to fortify his strength and dealt for Matt Capps' services. Having lost Joe Nathan to an injury for the entire 2010 season, Capps slid into the closer role seamlessly, pitching to an ERA of 2 and locking down 16 more saves to bring his season total to 42. After his breakout season, Capps signed an extension to stay with the Twins before his career quietly fizzled out in 2012. Post-trade, he pitched in 126 total games for Minnesota with a 113 ERA plus and 45 saves. Solid production out of a reliever over a trio of seasons. Considering that their bullpen was already solid at the time of the acquisition, you can make the argument that the trade was entirely unnecessary despite his solid results. The fuel to that argument comes from Minnesota dealing their number 4 overall prospect and number 58 in all of baseball, catcher Wilson Ramos. With the Twins having signed Joe Mauer to a hefty contract extension, Ramos was viewed as expendable, though I think Minnesota failed to maximize his value here. Ramos would become the everyday catcher in DC for the next 7 years. He clubbed 15 home runs in his first season, finishing 4th in Rookie of the Year voting, and ended up catching over 500 games for the Nationals through 2016. Throughout that time, he also endured a kidnapping in his home country and a torn ACL in his sophomore season, 2 instances that easily could have derailed a promising MLB career. That final season in 2016 was easily his best, where Ramos set a career high in games played, home runs, and triple slash line, receiving MVP votes and a Silver Slugger for the first and only time in his career. His combination of 500 plate appearances, a batting average over 300, and over 20 home runs is the only such season by a catcher in the last decade of play, and one of just 3 since 2010. He was the catcher for numerous gems thrown by Strasburg, Scherzer, Gio Gonzalez, and others, and in the end was worth over 10 wins above replacement replacement as the primary catcher for Washington, making this deadline swap from 2010 a slam dunk for the Nationals. Now, I run into a weird roadblock with these trade videos sometimes when I mention trades made by teams that won the World Series, because you can make the argument that regardless of whatever moves you made, they were all worth it because you won the Fall Classic in the end. I can understand and completely rationalize that perspective, but the point remains, some of these trades are just bad. Last year, the Texas Rangers rode the magic of $1 billion middle infield and potent starting rotation to their first World Series championship in franchise history. However, before they got to hoist the trophy, they made a series of crucial decisions at that year's trade deadline to improve their roster and fill in voids left by injured players. They traded away their number 4 prospect, infielder Luis Angel Acuna, to the New York Mets to acquire Max Scherzer. They sent away a pair of top 20 prospects in their system to bring in Jordan Montgomery. They spent cash considerations to add Austin Hedges to their catcher depth. All these moves were key to them winning it all in the end, but it was their very first trade made a full month before the eventual deadline that not only didn't really aid the club, but would also bite them the hardest in the aftermath of their victory. On June 30th, the Rangers made the first splash trade of the season, acquiring lefty flamethrower Aroldis Chapman from the Kansas City Royals to bolster the back end of their bullpen. After a nightmare 2022 season where he lost his closer role on the Yankees, Chapman was enjoying a resurgence as a setup man for the Royals on a one-year deal worth around $3 million. He pitched to a 2.45 ERA in nearly 30 innings throughout the first half. With inconsistency from major pieces of their bullpen, Chapman was a welcome addition and pitched fine in 30 regular season games for Texas. Credit where it's due, Chapman's numbers in their ensuing playoff run were effective. He made 9 appearances and allowed just 2 runs, though he definitely kept fans on the edge of their seat by managing tons of traffic on the base paths along the way. He accrued 6 holds and Texas won 8 of the 9 games that he pitched in. In exchange for Chapman's rental services, the Rangers traded from their vast pitching depth, but they unknowingly sent away one of the most promising young arms in all of baseball in return. Going back to the Royals was southpaw Cole Ragans, who had underperformed in his time as both a reliever and starter for Texas over the past 2 seasons. Now, in fairness to the Rangers, Ragans had never ranked in Texas's top 30 prospects list. He had undergone 2 separate Tommy John surgeries as a minor leaguer in 2018 and 2019, and he simply never had a standout season during his time in the minors. But the arm talent was always there. His average fastball and off-speed pitch velocity jumped 4 miles per hour from 2022 to 2023, which was higher than any jump made by qualified pitchers between seasons. With nothing on the line in 2023, Ragans immediately slid into the Royals rotation and almost instantly began to see dominant results. He won American League Pitcher of the Month honors in August, pitching to a 1.72 ERA in over 36 innings through 6 starts, at one point compiling 26 straight scoreless innings in a streak that extended into the next month. He finished a dozen starts in the second half for Kansas City with a sparkling 2.64 ERA, the 10th best mark of any pitcher from July to the end of the season. He also had the second lowest home run per 9 rate of any qualified pitcher in this window, trailing only Grayson Rodriguez of the Orioles. He hasn't slowed up a bit this year, already with well over 100 innings pitched and strikeouts in 2024, ranking in the top 5 of all pitcher for wins above replacement. As it stands, Cole Ragans has already been worth over 5 wins above replacement to the Royals, well over the half wins worth of value provided by Aroldis Chapman. And I'm sure if you asked most Ranger fans, they would make this trade 10 out of 10 times again, knowing how the season ended. But as it stands, this is an objectively lopsided trade that has a chance to get far uglier, considering Ragans will be under team control with the Royals until the 2029 season. And that'll do it for my list of lopsided deadline deals. If I missed one, leave a comment down below and maybe we'll do a part 2. That'll do it for this video, and I'll see you guys next time.